targets, the cost of adapting to climate change in developing countries is likely to reach 2 to 3 times the previous estimates of $70 to $100 billion per year by 2050. CMC's Kenton Chance reports.
The report released on Friday outlines in stark detail the huge cost to poor countries of adapting to climate change. The United Nations Environmental Programme's Adaptation Gap Report says the cost of adapting to climate change in developing countries is likely to reach 70 to 100 billion US dollars per year by 2050, 2 to 3 times the previous estimates. Gerald Lindo, a Jamaican negotiator at the climate change talks, told CMC that the report is very useful in highlighting the impact of climate change on poor countries.
There's a lot of lowballing, underestimation of this problem of climate change. And so people toss out numbers like, well, we need 100 billion, and 100 billion sounds big, and 100 billion will ostensibly take care of what countries need to deal with the problem. And the Adaptation Gap Report, I think, goes a long way to showing how little that is. I think the conversation needs to continue, but at least now it is moving in the right direction. It's really showing how big the amount of adaptation we need to do is, and how difficult it is for countries like ours to really keep up.
But does it also suggest that developing countries are really not willing to come up to the task?
Considering that we have seen that they have not fully populated the GCF, even at that $100 billion target, considering we have countries like Australia, whose minister, I think just before this COP, said that, we're not really putting any money in the GCF, we're going to do it through our ODA instead of through the GCF, then yeah, it really does underline again that big guys are not doing enough for us, because the problem really is a lot bigger than they're giving it credit for.
Lead negotiator for the Alliance of Small Island States, Hugh Seeley, explains the reality of the difference between the monies poor countries need to adapt to climate change and the amount that rich countries have pledged.
It's huge. Some have estimated that it could be close to $1 trillion a year that's required. We are pleased that there's been an initial capitalization of the Green Climate Fund at $9.7 billion over the next 4 years. But we have a problem as to how we're going to jump from that to what is really required, which is the developed countries have promised $100 billion per year by 2020. And now we're at $9.7 billion, which is spread over the next 4 years.
Seeley said that Caribbean nations must continue to highlight the ways in which they are already being affected by climate change.
I think that we have to continue to emphasize that we're the most vulnerable countries, and therefore that we need a special window of access. We also have absorption capacity constraints within small islands.
But Seeley also said that mitigation against climate change must also be a part of the discussion. He said renewable energy transforms the economies of small island developing states and helps them to adapt better to climate change. Kenton Chance, CMC News, Lima.
The